Hello, curious minds, and welcome to this intellectual journey. Today, we're diving into the mind of one of history's most radical, dangerous, and in my opinion, most liberating philosophers. A man whose ideas cost him everything, but who, in return, offered us a dazzling vision of the universe and our place within it. We're talking about Baruch Spinoza, a 17th century thinker who dared to ask the toughest questions. What is God? What is freedom? Are we slaves to our emotions? And most importantly, can we use pure, almost mathematical reason to achieve happiness and peace of mind? Spinoza's answers were so explosive that he was excommunicated, his books banned, and his name whispered as that of an atheist and a heretic. But today we'll see why his heresy is perhaps one of the most coherent and profound systems of thought ever created. Get ready, because we're about to deconstruct Spinoza's ethics. Before we begin, a quick note. To bring this narration to life, I've used artificial intelligence tools to generate the images you see. Think of them as a canvas, a way to illustrate the ideas and the atmosphere of our story. They won't always be a literal representation, but rather a visual accompaniment to help your imagination soar with me. I sincerely hope you enjoy it. To understand Spinoza's revolution, we must understand his world. He was born in 1632 in Amsterdam, a melting pot of ideas and commerce. His family was part of the Sephardic Jewish community, who had fled the Spanish and Portuguese Inquisitions. They were refugees who had found relative tolerance in the Netherlands. Spinoza was an intellectual star in his community. He received a traditional rabbinical education, but his restless mind pushed him far beyond. He studied the classics, emergent science, and crucially, the philosophy of René Descartes. And it was Descartes who presented him with the problem that would define his work. While studying, Spinoza also learned a trade. He became a lens grinder. Think about that for a moment. He spent his days creating tools to see the physical world more clearly, while his mind worked on creating a philosophical tool to see reality more clearly. The metaphor is perfect, but this clarity came at a price. His ideas began to sound dangerous. He questioned the immortality of the soul, the personal nature of God, and the authority of Scripture. For the synagogue, struggling to maintain its precarious position in Amsterdam, this was an intolerable threat. In 1656, at the age of 23, Baruch Spinoza was expelled from the Jewish community with a cherem, an excommunication of chilling severity. He was cursed, isolated, and forbidden for anyone to speak to him or read his writings. He became a pariah, philosophically and socially alone. This event, though brutal, was also a liberation. Free from dogmatic shackles, Spinoza dedicated the rest of his life, in solitude and poverty, to building his grand philosophical system, culminating in his masterpiece, The Ethics Demonstrated in Geometrical Order. And this is where the real adventure begins. The first major problem Spinoza tackles is Descartes' dualism. Descartes had divided reality into two fundamentally different substances. On one hand, res cogitans, the thinking thing, the mind. On the other, res extensa, the extended thing, matter, the body. This created a gigantic problem that plagued philosophy. If mind and body are two entirely distinct things, how do they interact? How can an immaterial thought like I want to move my arm cause a physical object, the arm, to move? It was the problem of the pineal gland, and Spinoza considered it a failure. Spinoza offers a radical and elegant solution. He said Descartes is wrong. There aren't two substances. Not three, not 10. There is only one, a single, infinite, and eternal substance that encompasses absolutely everything. This is called monism, the belief in the fundamental unity of all being. And what is this substance? Spinoza defines it with relentless rigor. Substance is that which is in itself and is conceived through itself. That is, it needs nothing else to exist or to be understood. It is the cause of itself, what he calls causa sui. This single substance must be infinite because if there were two, one would limit the other, and thus neither would be truly infinite. It must be eternal because if it had a beginning or an end, something external would have caused it or destroyed it, violating its definition of being causa sui. And here comes the phrase that shook the world. Spinoza gives a name to this unique, infinite, and eternal substance that is the totality of reality and the cause of itself. He calls it Deus sive natura, God or nature. The two words are interchangeable. This is pantheism. It's not that God created the world like a craftsman. It's that God is the world. God is the totality of the laws of physics, the structure of matter, the flow of thought. Everything that exists, from a galaxy to this very thought, is a part of God. Imagine the universe as an infinite ocean. That ocean is God, or substance. The waves we see on the surface, the currents, the drops of water, that's us. We aren't separate from the ocean. We are the ocean expressing itself in a particular and temporal way. For Spinoza, the God of the Bible, a bearded king who judges, gets angry, and hands down commandments, was a human projection, a superstition born of fear. The true God is impersonal. It is the eternal and immutable operating system of the cosmos. It is the very reason of the universe. Now, how does this single substance relate to the variety of the world we see? Spinoza introduces two key concepts, attributes and modes. Substance, being infinite, has infinite attributes or ways of expressing itself. These are its essential characteristics. Of those infinite attributes, we humans, due to our limitation, can only perceive two: thought, Descartes' res cogitans, and extension, his res extensa. They are not separate substances, they are two sides of the same single coin, which is God or nature. This resolves the mind-body problem. Your mind and your body aren't two things that interact. They are the same thing viewed from two different perspectives. Your mind is the idea of your body, and your body is the physical manifestation of your mind. They are a parallel unity, two attributes of the same substance. So what are we? We are modes. A mode is a particular modification of substance. We are a wave in the ocean, a finite and temporal expression of God. My body is a mode of the attribute of extension. My mind is a mode of the attribute of thought. Everything in the universe is a mode. This table, that tree, the planet Jupiter, your joy, my fear. Everything is a modification of the single substance. And here we arrive at the most challenging consequence of this system, determinism. If God is nature, and nature operates according to eternal and immutable laws, like those of physics or logic, then everything that happens has to happen. There is no randomness, no miracles. And brace yourselves, no free will. Spinoza asserts that we believe we are free only because we are conscious of our actions, but we are ignorant of the causes that determine us to act. We believe we choose to have a coffee, but that choice was determined by an infinite causal chain of brain chemistry, past habits, and external stimuli. This idea is terrifying for many. If I'm not free, what's the point of life? What's the point of ethics? And this is where Spinoza makes his most brilliant turn. His masterpiece is called The Ethics, and its goal isn't to depress us, but to show us a new kind of freedom. And to show us this path, he uses the most rigorous method he knows, geometry. The Ethics is written more geometrico, in the geometrical order. It's not a fluid essay, it's a list of definitions, axioms, propositions, demonstrations, and corollaries, like Euclid's Elements. Why would he do this? Because Spinoza believed that human passions, morality, and happiness weren't a mysterious chaos, but rather followed laws as precise as those governing triangles and circles. He wanted his philosophy to be irrefutable. He wanted to treat human appetites and emotions as if they were a matter of lines, planes, and bodies. He wanted to create a geometry of the passions. By understanding the causes of our sadness or our hatred with the same clarity with which we understand a theorem, we can free ourselves from their tyranny. So Spinoza begins his ethical system not with commandments, but with definitions. And the most important definition of all is that of conatus. This is the cornerstone of his psychology and ethics. It's a Latin term meaning endeavor or impulse. Spinoza states that each thing, insofar as it is in itself, endeavors to persevere in its being. Everything in the universe, from a stone to a human being, has this innate drive to continue existing and to increase its power of acting. This conatus is the very essence of anything. In human beings, when this conatus refers only to the mind, it's called will. When it refers to mind and body together, it's called appetite. And when we are conscious of this appetite, it's called desire. Desire is, for Spinoza, the very essence of the human being. This is revolutionary. Spinoza doesn't say that desire is a sin or something to be repressed. Desire is simply our nature in action. We don't desire something because it is good. On the contrary, we call good that which we desire, that which we feel increases our conatus. And this leads us directly to his theory of emotions, or as he calls them, affects. For Spinoza, there are only three primary affects from which all others are derived: desire, which we've already discussed, joy, and sadness. Everything we feel is a mixture of these three. The definition is key. Joy, Letitia, is the transition of a human being from a lesser perfection to a greater perfection. It is the feeling that accompanies an increase in our power of acting, an increase in our conatus. Think of when you solve a difficult problem or feel healthy. Sadness, Tristitia, on the other hand, is the transition from a greater perfection to a lesser one. It is the feeling that accompanies a decrease in our power of acting, a wound to our conatus. It's the feeling of failure, sickness, or loss. From these three, Spinoza geometrically derives all other emotions. Love, for example, is joy accompanied by the idea of an external cause. We hate something when it is sadness accompanied by the idea of an external cause. Hope is an inconstant joy about something future. Now, Spinoza divides effects into two categories: active effects and passive effects. And this is the key to his ethics and his concept of freedom. He calls this human bondage. We are passive when our affects are caused by things external to us. We are slaves, Spinoza says, when we react blindly to stimuli. Someone insults you and you react with anger. Your anger is a passive passion because its cause is external, the insult, and you don't fully understand it. You merely react. Most of our lives, Spinoza says, are spent in this bondage, tossed back and forth by fortune, by the opinions of others, by our fears and hopes. We're like a ship without a rudder in the storm of passive affects. So what does it mean to be active? What is freedom? An active affect is one that originates internally from our own nature, from our reason. We are active when we act instead of react. And the only way to do that is through understanding. Here's the brilliant twist. For Spinoza, reason doesn't fight against passions, as the Stoics or Descartes thought. You can't overcome an emotion with an abstract idea. He says, an affect cannot be restrained or suppressed except by an affect opposite to and stronger than the affect to be restrained. And what is that stronger affect? It is the joy that comes from understanding. Freedom for Spinoza is the transition from being a slave to passive passions to being an agent of active actions. And this transition happens when we comprehend the causes of our affects. For this, he introduces another key distinction: inadequate ideas versus adequate ideas. An inadequate idea is confused partial knowledge. It's when we experience something like an insult, but only know its effects on us, anger, not its complete cause. Most of our mental life is filled with inadequate ideas. We see the sun and believe it's a small disk a few hundred meters away. It's an inadequate idea based on imagination and the senses. Astronomical knowledge, however, is an adequate idea. When we have an adequate idea of an emotion, that is, when we fully understand why we feel it, what causal chain produced it, that emotion ceases to be passive. It stops being a passion that dominates us and becomes an action we comprehend. Imagine you understand that the person who insulted you did so not because of you, but because of their own insecurity, their own history of pain, their own determinism. Suddenly, your anger, based on the inadequate idea that they attacked me, dissolves. It's replaced by understanding, perhaps even compassion. The sadness of that passion transforms into the joy of understanding. And that joy, that active affect born of reason, is stronger. You've transformed a passive passion into an active action. You've liberated yourself, not by changing the world, but by understanding it. This is Spinoza's freedom. It's not the free will of choosing A or B. It's the freedom that comes from self-determination through reason. It's moving from being an ignorant effect of external causes to being a conscious cause that acts in accordance with its own nature. From this foundation, Spinoza redefines good and evil. These concepts aren't absolutes or divine commandments. They are relative to our conatus. Good is simply anything we know with certainty is useful to us, anything that increases our power of acting, that brings us joy. Evil is anything we know hinders our power of acting, that brings us sadness. Virtue, therefore, isn't obedience out of fear of punishment. Virtue is simply power. To act virtuously is to act in accordance with the laws of our own nature, that is, to act rationally. The free man, for Spinoza, is one who lives entirely under the guidance of reason. He does not fear death, because his mind is occupied with the contemplation of life and eternity. He does not act out of hatred or deceit, because he understands that doing so diminishes his own power. The free man seeks what is useful to him, what brings him joy, and he understands that the most useful thing for a rational being is another rational being. A society based on reason is not one of conflict, but of mutual cooperation, because my joy increases when I help others become more rational and joyful. But Spinoza doesn't stop there. He takes his system to its highest peak, to what he considers supreme happiness. He describes three types of knowledge. The first is imagination or opinion. It is the confused knowledge of the senses, inadequate ideas. Most of us live here. The second type is reason. This is scientific and logical knowledge. Understanding causes and effects, the laws of nature, geometry. It's the level of adequate ideas. It's the path to freedom we've been describing. But there's one more level. The third and highest type of knowledge is intuitive science. This isn't a mystical or vague intuition. It's an immediate and direct understanding of how each particular thing necessarily follows from the essence of God. It is seeing the whole in the part. It's when you not only understand that the Pythagorean theorem is true, reason, but you see its truth immediately and undeniably. It's grasping the essence of a thing, its exact place in the order of nature in a single intellectual glance. When we attain this third type of knowledge, we experience the most powerful and active effect of all, the highest possible joy. Spinoza calls it amor Dei intellectualis, the intellectual love of God. Let's break this down. It's love, which is joy accompanied by the idea of an external cause. What is the cause? God, or nature, the totality. And how is it produced? Through the intellect, through the highest knowledge. It is the pure joy that arises from understanding the totality of being and your necessary place within it. It's understanding that you, with all your struggles and joys, are as necessary an expression of God as the law of gravity. It's seeing your own life and all existence not from the perspective of time, but sub specie aeternitatis, that is, from the perspective of eternity. This intellectual love of God is the summit of Spinoza's philosophy. It is beatitude, supreme happiness. And here comes one of his most famous lines: "Blessedness is not the reward of virtue, but virtue itself." We aren't good to earn heaven or happiness. The very act of being good, of understanding, of being virtuous, is happiness. Understanding isn't a means to peace. Understanding is peace. It's the active joy of fully exercising our rational nature. And at this summit, the human mind, by understanding the eternal order of nature, becomes eternal. Not in the sense of personal survival after death, which Spinoza denies, but in the sense that we participate through the intellect in the eternal truth of God. For Spinoza, what dies is the body, and with it imagination and memory, the inadequate ideas. But the part of the mind that consists of adequate ideas, the part that understands the eternal logic of the universe, that part is, in itself, eternal, because the truths it comprehends are eternal. It's a system of astonishing coherence. From a single definition of substance, Spinoza has derived all of reality: metaphysics, psychology, ethics, and happiness. Everything fits together like a Euclidean theorem. But Spinoza didn't just live in the ivory tower of metaphysics. He was a deeply political thinker. He lived in an era of intense political and religious upheaval, and he saw how fear and superstition were used as tools of control. In 1670, he anonymously published the Theologico-Political Treatise. The book was an immediate scandal. It was banned for being forged in hell by the devil himself. What did it say that was so dangerous? First, Spinoza conducted one of the first modern textual criticisms of the Bible. He argued that it wasn't dictated by God, but written by humans in specific historical contexts. He said its purpose wasn't to teach philosophy or science, but to teach obedience and morality. He radically separated faith from philosophy. Faith, he said, is for salvation through obedience and good works. Philosophy is for truth through reason. They shouldn't be mixed, and above all, theology should not dictate what philosophy can investigate. Second, he attacked superstition. He argued that organized religion often degenerates into superstition when people, out of fear and ignorance, invent gods they can bribe with rituals. Political and religious leaders then exploit this fear to maintain control. The true sin for Spinoza wasn't breaking a ritual, but acting against reason. True piety was living a life of justice and charity, which is a dictate of reason itself. And this led him to his central political argument. The purpose of the state is not to dominate or instill fear. The purpose of the state is freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever we want, but the freedom to use our reason. Spinoza becomes one of the earliest and most eloquent advocates for democracy and freedom of speech. He argued that a state attempting to control the thought of its citizens is a tyrannical and ultimately weak state, because the human mind cannot be coerced. For him, democracy was the most natural and rational form of government because it unites people to live under the dictates of common reason. It's the system that best allows each individual to develop their conatus, their power of acting in harmony with others. Thus, his metaphysics, all is one, and his politics, we must cooperate rationally, are perfectly connected. We are parts of a greater whole, nature, and our greatest virtue is to act rationally for the good of the whole, which is also our own good. Spinoza died young, at 44, likely from a lung illness aggravated by the glass dust he inhaled while grinding lenses. He died as he lived, calmly, without fear, surrounded by a few friends, having completed his great work in secret. His Ethics was published by his friends right after his death, and the scandal was immediate. He was branded the monstrous philosopher for over a century, but his underground influence was immense. The German Romantics rediscovered him. Hegel, Nietzsche, Deleuze, all grappled with his system. Albert Einstein said he believed in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the orderly harmony of what exists, not in a God who concerns himself with the fate and actions of human beings. Einstein found an intellectual home in Spinoza, a rational and determined universe. Today, in an age of anxiety, polarization, and information overload, Spinoza feels more relevant than ever. He offers us an antidote to chaos. He offers us a universe where everything has a cause and where our greatest dignity lies in our capacity to understand it. The journey he proposes is not easy. It demands that we abandon comfortable beliefs, the idea of a personal God who watches over us, the idea that we are special and separate from nature, and the idea of our cherished free will. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but what he offers in return is profound. He offers us a freedom based on knowledge, not illusion. He offers us an ethics based on joy and power, not fear and guilt. And he offers us a blessedness that isn't a future reward, but an intellectual peace we can cultivate here and now. Spinoza, the excommunicated lens grinder, taught us that philosophy is not an abstract game, but the most powerful tool we have to polish the lens of our own mind, to see the world with clarity, and in doing so, find freedom and peace within the necessary order of the universe. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the mind of Baruch Spinoza. I hope it's given you as much to think about as it has me. It's been a pleasure guiding this journey. If this analysis has brought you value, please consider subscribing and joining this community of curious minds. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Which of Spinoza's ideas impacted you most? Do you find his vision of determinism liberating or terrifying? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time.